So making love kinda bore me. I wanna knock your block off, get my rocks off.
I wish I could hold you tight and take a flight out the hood. Was I foul? I believe I just had my last real kiss. I do believe we'll.
Before Tupac, before Biggie, before any of them had a record deal, a 16-year-old kid from Hollis Queens was already rewriting the rules of what hip-hop could be, and almost nobody gave him the credit he deserved. 1985, most teenagers were worried about Friday night plans. James Todd Smith was in his grandmother's basement, recording demo tapes on equipment his grandfather bought him. Equipment that almost didn't exist, because that same grandfather had a shotgun pointed at him just years before inside that very house. That's where this story starts. Not on a stage, not in a boardroom, in survival. When radio dropped that year, Def Jam was barely a company. Rick Rubin was mixing tracks in a New York dorm room. Russell Simmons was still figuring out if hip-hop could be a real business. And here comes this teenager. No group, no gimmick, no safety net. Just a voice and a hunger that most grown men couldn't match. People remember the Kangol hat, the gold rope chains, the lip, but they forgot, or maybe they never knew, what it actually cost him to get there, what he walked through before the lights found him. So let me ask you something. If LL Cool J had never made it out of that basement in Queens, what does hip-hop look like today?
LL Cool J is hard as hell. Battle anybody, I don't care, you tell. I accept.
The very thing that made him iconic became ammunition for critics who wanted to write his obituary. Then came the cannabis situation, years later, but planted in seeds of disrespect that had been growing for a decade. Artists he'd influenced were now lining up to test him. To take the crown they felt he'd been wearing too long. The tragedy wasn't that LL stumbled. The tragedy was that he'd earned better than what the machine was willing to give him. And for a moment, just a moment, it looked like they might actually win. Before there was a blueprint, before there was a dynasty, there was a kid from Hollis Queens standing in his grandfather's basement, rapping into a microphone his grandfather helped him buy. No label, no cosign, no industry machinery behind him. Just a 16-year-old named James Todd Smith who had something to prove to a world that hadn't asked for him yet. We talk about LL Cool J like he arrived fully formed, like the Kangol and the lip lick and the swagger were always there, inevitable, waiting. But that story skips the part that matters. The part where hip-hop itself was still fighting for the right to exist. This was 1984, 1985, before MTV Raps, before the genre had a lane in mainstream America, before anybody in a boardroom believed a black kid with a boombox could move units the way rock and roll did. Rick Rubin was working out of a dorm room. Def Jam was a phone number and a dream. And somehow, out of all that beautiful chaos, LL Cool J became the first rapper to make teenage girls scream and grown men pay attention at the same time. That is not a small thing. What got built in those years shaped every rapper who came after, the ones who admit it and the ones who don't. This is the story they left out of the highlight reel.
I don't believe I just had my last real kiss.
Queens, New York, 1968. James Todd Smith is born into a borough already humming with a restless creative energy that the rest of the world hasn't learned to hear yet. He grows up in St. Albans, a neighborhood in southeast Queens that had already given the world James Brown and Ella Fitzgerald, though nobody was handing out maps to greatness. The streets there carried both aspiration and weight in equal measure. His childhood was not gentle. His parents' marriage collapsed in violence. His grandfather, Eugene Boone, stepped in, a jazz musician who understood that rhythm could save a life before a life destroyed itself. That man bought young James his first DJ equipment, a turntable, a mixer, the tools of a future nobody had written down yet. By 9 years old, James Todd Smith was practicing in his grandmother's basement on Farmers Boulevard, obsessing over Grandmaster Flash, the Furious Five, and the cold-blooded precision of Mel Mel's delivery. He wasn't just listening. He was studying, dissecting how a voice could command a room it had never physically entered. At 14, he mailed a demo tape to a fledgling label operating out of the Hollis neighborhood just a few miles away, Def Jam Records. barely more than a dormitory idea in Rick Rubin's head and Russell Simmons' ambition. The tape landed. The phone rang. And the boy from Farmers Boulevard, who called himself Ladies Love Cool James, stepped into a moment the music industry wasn't ready for, but absolutely needed.
It's a making love kind of bore me. I wanna knock your block off.
By 1987, the streets already knew. Radio had landed like a thunderclap.
Radio, believe me, I like it loud. I'm the man with the box that can rock the crowd.
Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons at Def Jam, putting that raw, stripped-down boom behind a 17-year-old kid from Hollis, Queens who sounded like he was born to take over. But bigger and deffer is where the acceleration began. I Need Love hit radio, and something shifted. Barbershops went quiet when it came on. Women who had never paid hip-hop any attention started paying attention. Program directors at WBLS and Kiss FM had to reckon with the fact that this wasn't just street music anymore. It was crossing every line they'd drawn. LL had forced a conversation that nobody in the industry was ready to have. Then came Walking with a Panther in '89, and the debates got louder. Was he going too pop, too smooth? But those debates only proved how much weight his name carried. When Mama Said Knock You Out arrived in 1990, produced by Marley Marl, that question got answered with a closed fist. The Arsenio Hall performance alone put an entire generation on notice. Every rapper watching that night felt the pressure. Record stores in Harlem, Compton, Chicago's South Side, they couldn't keep the cassettes stocked. Block parties from Southside Jamaica to East Flatbush were running his records back to back. Radio DJs like Red Alert and Chuck Chillout were riding his cuts hard. LL Cool J wasn't just rising. He was redefining what a hip-hop career could look like. Longevity wasn't supposed to be part of the formula. He rewrote that rule in real time.
I come from a family that understands the power of unity, power of knowledge, and the power of God.
By the early 90s, LL Cool J had built something most artists only dream about, a foundation that looked unshakable. Radio hits, movie roles, a fan base that spanned boroughs and suburbs alike. But the music industry doesn't reward loyalty. It rewards leverage. And by 1992, LL was learning that lesson the hard way. Def Jam was changing. The label that had given him the keys at 16 was now a different machine. Corporate interests crowding out creative ones. New artists demanding attention. New sounds threatening to bury the old guard.
I'm saying I wish they'd learn how to act. They need some self-control. They all get used on their report card from our group because they acting like little kids.
LL wasn't dropping. He was being deprioritized. Quietly. Deliberately. The kind of erasure that doesn't announce itself. You just start noticing the phone rings a little less. And the culture wasn't waiting. Gangsta rap was rewriting the rulebook from the West Coast. In New York, the streets were building altars to a harder, rawer sound. LL's smooth-talking bravado, the leather, the Kangol, the lip, started reading to some like a relic. The very thing that made him iconic became ammunition for critics who wanted to write his obituary. Some things in this game get said out loud, and some things just get understood. Here's what the record shows. LL Cool J signed to Def Jam at 16. Got his first single pressed before most kids his age had a job. Rick Rubin heard the tape. Russell Simmons made the call. And just like that, a teenager from Hollis, Queens had a deal that rappers twice his age were still chasing. But who made that call happen? And why that fast? People close to the scene have talked, not on camera, never on record, about how hard it was to get a meeting at Def Jam in those days. Industry insiders have hinted for years that something in that early arrangement wasn't quite standard. That the terms LL navigated as a 16-year-old, without a lawyer, without a manager, without a parent who understood the music business, deserve a much closer look than they've ever gotten. Was there someone pulling strings behind the scenes? Someone who saw what LL had and decided to protect that, or profit from it, before the kid even knew what he was sitting on? And what about the records that didn't make the first album? What got shelved? What got buried? And by whose decision? LL has never gone into detail. His grandmother, who raised him, is gone now. The people who were in that room, they aren't talking. Maybe they don't need to. Maybe the silence itself is the answer everybody already knows.
We're about to start an extinction level event. As soon as this man jumps on stage,
No
that's
question.
what we're about to do.
It, man. We're going to get it in a little 14.
By the time the history books started catching up, the culture had already moved on. That's the quiet tragedy at the center of LL Cool J's story. Not that he failed, but that the full weight of what he built was never properly measured while the moment still belonged to him. Listen to how Drake controls a room. Listen to how Kendrick bends vulnerability into armor. Listen to how every rapper who ever stood alone in front of a mic and decided that confidence was its own kind of truth. They all walked a road that James Todd Smith paved before most of them had a reason to dream. LL didn't just make records. He created a permission structure. He told an entire generation of young black men that you could be hard and romantic, that you could be a warrior and still write love letters. That complexity wasn't weakness, it was power. J. Cole has said it. Ludacris has said it. The influence runs deeper than any single quote. And yet, his name comes up in footnotes when it should be in the opening paragraph. He gets recognized at award shows when he should be the reason award shows exist. There's grief in that. Real grief. And there's also pride. The kind that doesn't need validation to survive. History has a debt here. Not the debt of sentiment, but the debt of accuracy. LL Cool J didn't just participate in the golden era. He defined the terms by which it would be remembered. That's not opinion. That's the record. There's still a question nobody's really answered. If a 16-year-old kid from Hollis Queens can walk into a recording studio with a demo tape, get a deal, and change the entire sound of a culture, what does that tell you about what we almost missed? What else got left on the table? Whose voice never made it out of the basement? LL didn't just rap about being the greatest. He became the standard by which everything after him got measured. And he did it before he could vote. That's not nostalgia talking. That's the record. If you were there, if you remember the first time you heard, "I Need a Beat" come out of somebody's box, drop that memory in the comments right now.